welcome to DDOcast episode 336, recorded on Friday, May 16th. I'm your host, Patrick. With me this week we have Voodu returning. Say hello, Voodu.
Hello, Voodu.
This week's screenshot is Kilowatt sees a shooting star foretelling a new age of pirates in the 172nd screenshot of the week. Very thematic with the update 22 coming out soon. We like to talk about Dungeons & Dragons online nearly every weekend. You can watch us through Google Plus Hangouts, YouTube, or from our website, DDOcast.com. DDOcast is hosted by CyberEars, the awesome podcast hosting network. Shows are usually available within a few days of recording. This one should be available tomorrow in the afternoon, hopefully. Otherwise, it might not be available till Monday based on my schedule. We're doing trying a few things here. This is a little bit of an experiment. Theoretically, this is not necessarily a, quote, live show. But I'm trying to test a few things simultaneously, as well as I'm hoping to, I'm going to play a little bit more with the video editing, hopefully, and you'll hear why in a minute. So that's kind of why this isn't necessarily a live show, or a traditional live show that we normally do, but this will be more of a recorded show with some editing. The next show will probably be next Saturday, May 24th. And you can stay updated by following us on our social media pages or our website, DDOcast.com, which also has a calendar, which, if you don't know, I try to mention this every once in a while. We have a calendar on DDOcast.com, and you can actually subscribe to it using different formats for that. If you do ever have problems with that, getting that to work, you can email me at ddocast@gmail.com, and I can see if I can get that working for you. But I know it works for me, and I can see everything on all of my iDevices if I so choose. So you kind of keep up to date with that kind of stuff. I mostly limit it to store sales, bonus days, and when the cast is going to be. Although I usually have, if I know what the title of the cast is going to be, I'll put that in there and put a description in there as well. So you can kind of keep up to date with that. However, things are subject to change. As evidenced this week, we were hoping to do an Ask the Devs pertaining to bugs in QA, but the plans for that kind of fell through. We weren't able to do that. So I asked Voodu to join me here last minute, and what we're going to do this week is do an extended Epic Education Temple of Deathwyrm. It will be the other new raid. So it should be a lot of fun, and I'm hoping to do some video editing, so maybe we can it won't just be us talking, and hopefully I'll be able to splice in some video and some pictures of that, but no promises. It depends on how long it takes me to figure it out, and if I can actually make it happen and be smooth and halfway decent and not really lousy. And I have somewhat of a limited time to make that happen. So we'll see how it works. I may end up releasing it and then reposting it or in like 2 or 3 weeks with the video spliced in correctly, but we'll see. Anyways, we'll start with some game news. It's a much lighter game news week this week since everything's kind of more or less out. Some news on guilds. Virgil wrote that regarding to the buffs, durations are intended to be 3 hours at base, increasing up to 5 hours as your guild gains levels. There are specific levels that grant 30-minute duration bonuses, which I think is a pretty darn good way of doing things. I like that it grows as your guild gets higher. It's a nice perk, I think. Most numbers for your effects should be accurate for your feedback on Lumenia. They are intentionally changing energy resistance to lower but stacking numbers, which is interesting because that means that your resistance spells will be beneficial in conjunction with those, so that's kind of fun. Also important since there's a lot of, when you start getting particularly in higher epic levels, stuff does a lot of elemental damage. I'm sure you've noticed that a lot.
Big time.
Extra resistance is good as opposed to a one or the other.
I like that change.
Yeah, it should be a good change. It's a little bit different, but yeah, I think it'll be a good change for the game and a good compromise. That you're lowering it, but it's stacking, which again it makes that spell more relevant.
Look for draconic soul gems to increase in value.
Possibly, yeah. That's a good point. Maybe I should see if I can buy one cheap and sell it later.
Do it before you make this broadcast available to others.
Yeah, right. Let's see, where were we? Nearly every effect is using the bonus type guild. Note that we've changed the bonus types on some of the older abilities to also be of type guild for the sake of stacking concerns. Ability scores are no longer artifact bonuses, for instance. Cool. Like that. Stacking stats as well. Spell power is not intended to be 100 times more than the text says. Oh, darn. Be a lot of spell power. Mini effects scale with player level from 1 to 10, 11 to 20, and 21 plus. This isn't true for every bonus, however. So that's kind of an indication of how they're going to scale it. It sounds like it's going to be just from 1 to 10 will be one set, 11 to 20 will be one set, and then 21 plus will be the other set, which makes things pretty simple, I think. I think that's a good way to do it. It doesn't have to be everything. Every level doesn't make it jump up or down or anything. The exact renown curve is still subject to some review, so they haven't figured what that's going to be yet, and they're playing with the numbers. Round 2 on Lemania. I pulled out a few of the highlights from the release notes, and we'll kind of cruise through those and talk about some of those. There's a new Tier 5 Swashbuckler ability, Coup de Grace. You can either be a melee or a ranged attack. It's make an attack with +3 weapon damage. If it strikes any fascinated, sleeping, dancing, dazed, tripped, mesmerized, paralyzed, petrified, or stunned enemy, it must make a fortitude save, d20, plus your perform skill,
Wow.
woohoo, or die instantly. So that's pretty potent. I'm just going to say that right there.
See, that's the first thing I've seen that makes me want to turn my bard into a swashbuckler.
It's tier 5, which means you got to get up there, which, I doubt my bard will go for this just because I don't think, just the way that my bard's designed, not necessarily anything in Swashbuckler tree, but we're talking, what, 30 points in that tree, I think, to get to tier 5, if I remember correctly. Just for that ability doesn't make a lot of sense for my bard. Now, having said that, that's a really nice ability.
It'll be cool to play with nonetheless, then maybe switch back after it gets old.
Yeah, I mean, adding your perform skill into a DC is, for a bard, I mean, hopefully you're maxing your perform skill plus your charisma. I mean, we're talking, I mean, it's 23 would be your max ranks, plus, I don't know, conservatively 15 from your charisma modifier. But that's up there. So that's probably better than most other abilities death abilities that are out there in the game as far as attacks.
Well, my bard's sitting at about 125 perform right now. So D20 plus that, I don't see how anything's going to make that save.
Yeah, the only catch is you got to get stuff in a specific condition. But dancing, come on. Our observers will dance. Done. Boom.
Heck yeah.
They might take the dancing one out of that. I don't know. We'll see. Let's see. The Divine Crusader stand and be judged ability no longer affects bosses. So there goes the easy streak on the new raids. But that's okay. That was kind of a little silly. Epic moment counter should no longer be reset when going through some portals. A common problem, it seems. If you do find a portal, file a bug report if that happens to you. I think it's kind of like the ladder thing. Certain portals they have to do individually, so keep an eye out for that. The single weapon fighting feat and two-handed fighting feat cannot be taken by the same character. They are going to be mutually exclusive feats, which some people weren't really happy about. There's kind of a debate going online right now about that, and you can, if you have some things to say about it, feel free to join in on that conversation. Who knows? That might change back. They're kind of trying it out right now. Demolition charges have been updated to allow characters with the Rogue Mechanics Field Engineer Tier 3 enhancement to place them in half the time and not be interrupted by damage. Woohoo! Characters with improved traps can continue to place them in half the time as well. I don't know if that means if you can do it in quarter of the time if you have both, but I like that you can't be interrupted by damage. That's pretty slick. Although I would think they would put in a concentration check or something with that, but I'm not going to complain. There's some updates with trap parts. Trap parts should now be given out according to the type of trap disabled. Hopefully that means I will end up with less fire trap parts. A disabled device skill check is now correctly checked when rolling to determine if trap parts are distributed, and trap parts are now given out on Epic Normal and Epic Elite difficulties. And the random roll for a number of trap parts given on a successful roll now has a minimum of half the CR of the trap, with the maximum number of parts shared being the CR of the trap. So some improvements to trap. I You probably don't craft any traps, I'm guessing.
I don't have any rogues at this time,
Yeah.
or trappers.
Most of what I do with my trap parts is try and sell them on the auction house, with some degree of success and some not. Hopefully, with a little bit more variety, I'll be able to get some of those. Mostly like the magical and the fire ones, which I can't even fit in my bag anymore. I have so many of those. Don't sell very well, but the other ones tend to sell decently as long as you price them aggressively. Um, a fun thing this week. So with Lamani in round two, they did a character wipe because they turned the character copy back on. They worked the tool, so character copy should be working now to get to Lamania. Some players reporting that you may have to log into a character if you haven't logged into them in a while to get it to work correctly for that character. However, one of the interesting things about this was they have redesigned the tool with future use in mind, including a transfer button. What that means precisely, we don't know, but conceivably we may be able to be transferring characters across servers in the near future using this tool, which could be fun. We'll
That
see
would
how
be
well it works.
amazing.
I doubt it will be for free. They used to have character transfers, but it costs money. I don't know what that's going to mean here, but we'll see. It could
I
be
think
interesting to see.
I think they can. I think people can still do that. I had a guildie that just recently transferred a character over.
Yeah, that sounds. I don't think they really stopped. They stopped for a while, but I think it's back.
Yeah.
I think they reduced the price of it actually, but I'm not positive on that.
Oh, nice.
Well, that was a while back. Um, Bonus days this week: 20% guild renown. Very nice for the upcoming changes to guilds. Store news: +5 tomes are on sale until May 22nd. Always a popular one, and they're on sale by 25%. All stat tomes 1, 2, 5 are on sale at 25%. You can also get 25% off of veteran status and 32-point builds. The freebie for the week is a Bell of Opening, just one. The code is Bell14. You get one per account. The Chronicle is not quite out yet. I might splice that in when I do some editing. We'll see. But I'll cover what I am aware of. That's kind of going on around. DDO Twitch was on Orion this week with Crystal Cove and Beyond the Rift. So some fun there. See, the High Lords of Malkir are doing a Shroud.
We still got space.
That is May 17th, Saturday at 9 p.m. Eastern Time on Sarlona. The High Rollers on Cannith are doing Von 5 and 6 this weekend. You probably won't be able to join that if you listen to this recorded, because I don't think we're going to have quite in that amount of time. They're doing it at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. You can, however, check the Cannith forums for their raid schedule. They seem to be doing raids fairly regularly as well. And just a reminder that we are still doing our survey. I should be getting to the point where I'll be distributing prizes within the next week or so, and kind of going through and getting all the data from that survey in the next week and a half. So it'll take a little bit of time to distribute some of the prizes. There's a little bit of crunching and stuff to figure out, and visiting servers and all that stuff. So be patient with the prizes, but should get that coming through shortly. I'm going to say that if you want to be entered for the one of the 500 turbine point codes, you need to take the server before Memorial Day. I will probably draw them on Memorial Day. So if you want to get a chance at a 500 turbine point code, do that. And that's pretty much the news for this week. A lot less than before. So now we're going to do the roundtable discussion. And we're going to talk about the Temple of Deathwyrm and extended epic education. Should be a lot of fun. And just a reminder, I'm hoping to edit some screenshots and video behind us talking, so it's not just us talking. But I'm not making any promises of that. That may or may not happen. I'm going to try, but we'll see what happens. So, Temple of Deathwyrm. Let's start with flagging. You have to get flagged for this raid. It's not too difficult. It's a little harder than Fire Peaks, but you have to go kill a named. I think her name is the Emissary, something like that.
That is correct.
And she is in the Thunderholm Explorer area and she is down a ways. It's a little bit of a jaunt, and it's very easy to get lost if you don't know where you're going to get there. Um, and she's a tough cookie. Uh, she is a draconic incarnation who has every element available to her. So she can cast all the breath weapons, and they hurt a lot. Um, they're pretty much one-shot kills in my experience.
Spell absorption is a must.
Yeah, that's an option. Or ranged works really well as well.
True, true.
Stay out of range and shoot her. That has worked very well for me on many occasions. Um, so that's also an option. But it's fairly simple to get to make that happen. Other than the fact that she is pretty beefy, there is a red shrine in the area. So as long as you're close enough to that red shrine, you can use that. But that's not necessarily guaranteed depending on how you approach attacking her.
Big time. Kill the trash first and bring her back close enough to that red shrine. So when she does pound you with a 1,000-point death ray, then you can just jump back up there.
Yeah, I'm not sure if she's supposed to be able to go back this far, but I like to pull her back to she's kind of in a gated area. I like to pull her back on the other side of the gate, so that you're kind of in that area. You can easily reach that red shrine and get yourself back up if she kills you. And
Great,
she probably will.
great maps on Wiki too to find a direct path to her.
Yeah, once you learn it, it's not too hard. There is a mirror puzzle that you have to do, and we'll talk about doing mirror puzzles with this raid as well, because that's kind of a major feature of this raid. But you do have to do a mirror puzzle as well. But it's not too hard to get there. And if you get a group together and you have a Slayer pot going, by the time you get down there, if you're killing all the stuff, you'll probably have somewhere along the lines of 400 to 700 kills, depending on what kind of Slayer pot you're using. So you can get a lot of XP doing it too. So yeah, it's a good raiding mechanic or flagging mechanic. I think actually I kind of like it. Easy to do if you want to do it just fast, or if you can get really profitable from it and kill a lot of stuff and get a lot of bonuses. So let's talk about getting ready, and we'll start with. I'll put this in your direction, Voodoo. What are some things that you need to do to get ready for this raid besides flagging? What kind of gear should you be bringing? Is there anything special that you might consider getting a hold of?
In terms of gear, one of the things I'm trying to get my hands on right now is some negative energy absorption. Should be nice for the dragon. She's shooting lots of negative energy bolts and blasts at the party. Other than that, I think the buffs that your party are going to have will suffice.
I would say the one thing you're going to want to bring is a death block item. Her breath weapon dispels Death Ward.
Good call.
And there are casters in there that do cast Finger of Death. So keep that in mind. You will probably want to grab a death block item. And the Silver Flame Talisman works great. Boom, done. So that works really well.
I always forget about that. I just run with that. I've got an item on at all times, so I forget I even have it.
Most of my characters don't actually actively wear death block anymore, just because of the gear slots and having access to Death Ward on a clicky and some of the potions from Eating Star. So it's not something I initially have a lot of characters running with that, but all of them, for whatever reason, the necklace slot has always been kind of a swing slot for me. It kind of usually doesn't have something that really critical to a character, so I can swap in that Death Block talisman from we're talking about the Silver Flame Talisman. It's an item that you can get by running Necropolis quests. You get a little trinket, and as you go to the different areas, like different capstone quests of each of the different series, you upgrade that trinket into a talisman, and at its third tier, its highest tier, you get death block and 10 negative energy absorptions. Clicks on it. So
Love it. Well worth the investment to upgrade that fully.
yeah, you have to run Cursed Crypt to upgrade it to tier 3 though.
Abbott. You can do it in Abbott too.
You can do it in Abbott too. Although I think for the average player, Cursed Crypt might be a better option. You can actually upgrade it past that tier, but you lose the item, and you can turn it in for a reward from the guy who gives it to you. I should mention that you have to get the Silver Flame trinket, not the Emerald Claw trinket. And actually, while we're on the topic, that turn in is actually pretty nice too because it's a Night Shield clicky, which blocks magic missiles. It's on armor, which is a little bit of a pain, but it's a nice clicky anyways. Anyways, back to Temple of Deathwyrm. Bring a death block item. That's probably the one thing I would say to bring. You're not going to run into a lot of energy damage other than the Helmed Horrors. So that's not as big of a concern. You don't need to bring any. There's not really a reason to bring energy absorption. There is one place where spell absorption can be handy, which we'll mention, but that's not a big feature of this raid either. So other than death block, I mean, I guess we should say bring some resurrection scrolls. People are going to die probably, so you might need to do that as well. All right, so general layout of this raid. Lots of mirror puzzles. You're going to spend a lot of time bouncing back and forth between what we call the light side and the shadow side. For most of the raid, not a big deal. Don't worry about. You don't really need to know which one's light or shadow side. You're going to go through them naturally, very easily. The end fight that becomes a little bit bigger of a deal. It's a little harder to get to the shadow side at the end fight, and it's a very key part of the raid. We'll talk about that later. For now, general layout: 2 mirror puzzles. Then there's going to be kind of an optional path. You're going to have the choice of 2 of 3 quote puzzle rooms. They're not like puzzles, not like the mirror puzzles, but you have to figure out how to get through them. And there's 3 options. They're always the same option. They're the same 3 options, but you only get 2 of them for each raid. 2 more mirror puzzles after you get through that room, whichever room you choose. You can do both if you want. But you get 2 mirror puzzles, and then you fight a Bone Guardian mini boss. Not too difficult to do. 2 more mirror puzzles. There's a lot of mirror puzzles. And then you get to a second optional room. It's exactly the same as the first in that you have there's 3 different options. You'll get 2 of them for each raid, so you can pick which one that you want to do. You get the shrine, and then you do the boss fight. Sound pretty correct to you?
You're right on.
Awesome. So we'll kind of go through some of the, we're going to kind of go in order, but we're going to start by just talking about mirror puzzles. We're not going to talk about the first 2 mirror puzzles and the second 2 mirror puzzles. We're just going to talk about mirror puzzles in general. Do you have any tips for doing the mirror puzzles?
I think they are somewhat intuitive. They're surprisingly intuitive for how big they are. They can look a little overwhelming at first, but if you focus on where the light beam starts and look to see where it ends, it's pretty easy to figure out. If you do struggle with those and there's nobody in your party that's experienced with doing those solutions, you can look them up on Wiki. Although I will say that the orientation of the maps on Wiki to show you the solutions seem to be rotated the wrong way to make it easy to follow. I had to use it once a few weeks ago.
That's kind of funny. I will mention that just to kind of give a basic mechanics, you can turn the mirrors. Let's see, they turn clockwise. They only turn in one direction, which is really lame. It'd be really nice if you could turn them in different directions, but that would probably take a text box and be a little more aggravating than it's worth. You can only turn them in one direction. You have to turn the mirrors 45 degrees. A 45-degree angle to the direction of the beam that's coming in compared to the direction you want it to go. So if you think about how it becomes really obvious once you start playing with it, and the beam will actually show you where it's going. So that's kind of how it works. You don't just turn it 90 degrees to the direction of the beam. So you need to do a 45-degree angle. If the beam is already hitting the mirror, make as you're clicking it around, if you do it really fast and then get it in position, sometimes the mirror doesn't shoot the laser. So that last turn, if the mirror's hitting the mirror already, or if the light's hitting the mirror already, get to the one just before that last turn, and then wait a little, maybe a couple seconds, and then turn it. That tends to make it a little bit more reliable. A lot of folks will actually set up all the mirrors before they fire the laser. The reason they do that is if you stand in the laser for any reasonable length of time, you could run straight through it and you'll be okay. Although I still just jump over it if I can. If you stand in the laser, it'll kill you. Maybe not outright if you have a really high amount of hit points, but I think it pretty much just kills you outright. It does a lot of damage. So don't stand in a laser. And before you fire the laser, let people know you're firing the laser. But that's why people will kind of set it up beforehand. I would agree with you. They are very intuitive. They're not. If you kind of look at them, you can kind of figure it out pretty quickly. It's usually a good idea to start at where the source of the laser is, and just kind of work your way around. There's a couple of the puzzles. A lot of the puzzles only have one solution, but a couple of them have multiple solutions. And in those cases, you'll get to a point where you're not really sure which direction you should shoot the laser. Go to the other end and start from that direction, and you can usually get it. There's one puzzle, and I want to say it's the second light side puzzle. It might be the third. There's one that has it doesn't matter which end you start from, you're going to get to a T intersection, and you're not going to know which way to shoot it. You have to pick the right one from each end. That one's probably the hardest one to do. There's also, I'm pretty sure it's the second shadow one. It's easier to solve if you turn the laser itself, which you can do, which is a handy tip. Let's see. Anything else we should mention about the mirror puzzles?
Yeah, if you have a friend that you're hazing, tell them they can get a light weapon damage buff by stepping into the laser. They'll appreciate that.
Hazing. We should note that in the third set of mirror puzzles, you have to kill a Wren named Helm Horror and a Beholder in one of them before the laser actually becomes active, before you can actually get the laser to start firing. And sometimes the Helmed Horrors like to hide up in the air. They kind of float up in the air, and then they get stuck behind a wall, and they can't come back down. But you can shoot them. So if you don't have a laser and you can't figure out why, look up, way up, and you'll probably see a Helmed Horror hanging out in the sky above. All right, so that's the mirror puzzles. Now we're going to talk about the first set of optional rooms. Again, so you're going to end up you're going to come through. We should say actually before when you get the laser from the mirror puzzles to hit the crystal. Actually, in the first shadow side, there's actually 2 lasers and 2 crystals that you have to light up, which can throw some people off a little bit. But anyways, so you go through portals once those crystals light up, and you should be able to find the portal pretty easily. You can go back and forth. You can actually as you get higher up the temple, you can actually jump off the edges, and you'll end up back in the previous mirror puzzles, which is also true of the end fight. You can actually jump off from the end fight, and you'll end up in a previous mirror puzzle.
Ooh, little note there that I found out the hard way. When you jump off to a lower mirror puzzle, there are some walls that if you're at the bottom, you cannot jump onto. There's some invisible barriers. And I tried to jump on top of the wall from an above puzzle, and there's sort of an invisible walled room there that you can drop into, but once you're in there, you can't get out unless you /stuck or D-door. So don't jump on top of the walls.
Good thing to know. So you advance to the different parts of this the raid by going through the puzzles that you unlock. After you do the first 2 mirror puzzles, you come into a room. It'll basically you'll have, as I said before, there's 3 optional rooms here. You're only going to have 2 of them in a given raid, and which 2 is randomly selected. So the puzzle you come into is on the, let me do this right, the east side. But I'm going to give all of my directions between left, center, and right, as if you're standing when you zone in. There are runes next to each of the portals. If you are a dwarf or if you have high enough intelligence, you can read them. They are kind of helpful, kind of not. They'll describe the room, and they'll be consistent about describing the rooms, but the room positions never change. So if a portal's up in that specific location, you know which puzzle you're going to get if you know what portal that leads to. I can't remember if I think there's actually like true names based on those runes, but they don't necessarily give you, like I said, they're not necessarily as helpful as a description. So I'm going to call them by what what the server on Kyber tends to call them colloquially as. Solana might have a different set of names for them, and Voodu will fill us in on those as we go. But what we're going to do is we're going to talk about each of the different rooms and kind of get some tips on how to do that, how to do those different rooms. Did I explain all that stuff, all the basics pretty well there?
Definitely. It's nice that the locations of the puzzles don't change. And also, don't stress about, if you can't read them because, like Patrick said, they don't change location. I've never actually had a tune that could read those, so it's not necessary.
Yeah, and the portal that leads to those different rooms, you can actually go back into the intersection room. You don't have like once you go through, you're not stuck. You can go backwards. That's totally fine. Um, Although I will note that when you do, you enter that room in the same spot that you entered it the first time. You always come through the first that you always enter that room in the same spot, which throws a lot of people off sometimes. Okay, so we're going to talk about the room that's as you come in. It is to your left. On Kyber, we call that the Mario room. I don't know if you have a different name for that.
Most people just call it jumping. I like
Yeah.
your name better, though.
There's no monsters in it. It's just jumping. This is kind of tends to be the one that I think most parties default to on Kyber, mostly because if you know how to do it, you can get through it pretty quick. Particularly if you have some sort of abundant step, Cannon's boots, or the draconic wings, or the sorcerer electric version. Any of those will get you past the hardest part of it pretty quick and easy, and you can get moved through it pretty fast. If you don't know what you're doing, it can be kind of a pain. There's no time limit until the party, is tired of waiting for you. So if you're in a party, I would recommend that you don't just take the quote death train. If you can't do it, what you can do is, you go back outside, stand in a laser, get killed, have someone come grab your stone, and they'll pull you up. That's pretty easy to do. But I would recommend you at least try it a few times before you get frustrated, just to see if you can get across and learn how to do it. I'm hoping to splice a video in there of me doing this. It's not too tricky until you get up to a certain point. You have two options. One is you can use an abundant step or other version thereof and zoom from platform to platform, or you can try and jump on these pegs sticking out of the wall. The thing that's really aggravating about this is there's something like six pegs on the bottom, but it's like there's a peg and then there's another peg just above it, so you can't just walk straight across. It blocks your path, and there's a ceiling, so you can't just like jump over it, which makes it a little tricky. Is that pretty clear to you? I know you kind of
You,
know it, but
you do have to finesse it for sure. It's interesting that you said that your folks are making that the default puzzle room. On Sarlona, I feel like people are avoiding that room.
once you figure it out, and if you have like just one person, you can carry the whole rest of the party through if they needed to. It'd be a pain, but you can do it.
It's easy, and don't forget you can always take your armor off to boost your jumping ability a little bit.
Yeah, taking your armor off, take your shield off, get a jump from somebody, haste potion or clicky, rage, anything that increases your strength. Those all make it easier to jump. Um, that last section that I was talking about that's kind of hard to the pegs that are sticking out of the wall. What really works is one, stick your feather fall on. Two, you want to um, jump around the pegs. And when you're floating in towards the peg, try and come straight in so you can land on the peg you're aiming for. If I can get the video on this will make this a lot clearer. And then when you jump around it, try and scooch out to the edge of the peg, and then jump out and around. When you get to the last platform, so there's between the last two sets of platforms, there's all the pegs sticking out on the wall, and it's up down up down up down pattern. And then from the next platform to get up to the phylactery, there's another series of pegs, but they kind of go up at an angle. But again, they alternate. They kind of go up and down. If you jump on the first one, you can actually jump, kind of skip that whole section of pegs and jump and grab the top ledge on a certain spot. And if people know what, it's probably gonna be someone in your group that'll know what I'm talking about, and they'll kind of figure that out. You can also jump around to the next peg and then jump up to the peg that was kind of in your way to jump to that peg and then jump over. You don't have to jump over the phylactery. You can range the phylactery very easily once you get up to the top. Um, that's kind of the way that we do it. I don't know if you have any tips to add to this one. It sounds like it's not one that you do very often.
I've actually only done it a few times. My group and yeah, I just was in a pug last night that we did a couple runs in a row, and we don't normally do that one.
Yeah, it's pretty much the default on the Kyber as far as I can tell. At least the people that I tend to run with. Um, Once you play around it, you can kind of get a feel for it. Of course, lag can be a real problem. It's very much a timing and twitch thing, so it can be kind of tricky to get to do it all right. Even like I know exactly how to do it. I've done it several times. I'm still probably 75% of the time I miss for one reason or another. So it's not the easiest thing in the world, but there's no monsters to kill you. There's pretty much no way you can die in the room, and there's no time limits, so you can mess around there for a while. Um, but okay, second room. It's a maze. I think the actual name for it is the archives, but I'm not positive on that. It's a maze of portals. It's a series of rooms with portals in it. If you pick the right portal, you get another room of portals. If you pick the wrong portal, you end up in front of a dwarven skeleton. If you talk to him, he kills you outright. Done. You end up. Uh, I haven't actually ever let one of them kill me, so I'm not exactly sure how this works. But if he kills you, you'll be able to res yourself. Um, Nobody has to come get you. You can res yourself, and you start over in the puzzle, in the maze. Um, let's see. There is a rune in each room that will tell you which way to go. Sometimes it lies. I think if you read it twice, it'll tell you whether or not it's lying. So it's a little bit of a weird thing. Most groups I've been in, they don't even bother with the rune. They just someone picks a portal and they either die or they don't. And then they'll type in party chat if you either want to go left or right. You'll do that a couple times, and then if you get it correctly enough times, you'll come up in a room that has 5 extra portals. There's always a portal that you come into. So there'll be one that has 5 portals. 3 of them are always wrong. The only one it's either the one that's to the left or to the right of the rune that you can read or not read, depending on how skillful you are. Um, and so it's one of those 2 portals. After you go through that portal, you end up in another room with more portals. Here's the trick, and this is really important. You don't want to take either one of those portals. What you want to do is look to your left, and there's a little kind of rocky outcropping that you can jump on, and then you can jump up above there because there's no ceiling in this room, and you can walk over around, and there's the phylactery. You have any tips on that set of rooms?
You nailed it.
A lot of folks like to use D-doors, which you can totally do instead of dying from the executioners. But that's not necessarily you don't need to do it that way. You can just let them kill you, and then you can res, and you'll be fine. You can keep going. Just make sure you type the combination in for people to follow you.
If you like riddles, you'll love the portal maze.
Yeah, all of the runes, they don't tell you left or right. They tell you things like in relationship to the direction of the sun setting, you want to turn this direction. Stuff like that. So then that when you kill a phylactery, you'll actually find at the end of each of these rooms you kill a phylactery. It's not the real phylactery, and we'll cover kind of more about what a phylactery is and how that works later. But just note that once you kill a phylactery, you get another portal, and that'll send you to the next mirror set. Okay, the last room, the traps room. Do you want to explain this one?
Yeah, I'll give a stab at it. So there's a little gauntlet of traps, spinny traps. You've got some spell wards. Everything's disableable, so it's nice to have a trapper in here. On normal difficulty, most tunes can just run through it. It's not that long, and what you want to do here is navigate your way through traps, whether you're just going to run through it on normal or you're actually going to have a trapper take care of everything before you go in. And then when you go upstairs, there's going to be a lever at one end, and that lever is going to open up a gate at the other end. And so what you can do is, once one person makes it to the end, then a person on a lever is going to open it up for them. And then once they get through, there's another lever on the other side in which they can allow other people through. So you don't have to have a person manning the lever on the inside of the maze at that point. It's good to know that if you are a toon that has wings or abundant step or snow slide, you can hit the lever inside the maze and quickly wing over and make it through that gate.
Just watch out for the air jets.
Big time, yeah. There are a couple air jets right before the gate to the end that are going to push you back. But if you finesse it, you can get around them.
Yeah, it's a pretty simple room. It's the only one of these rooms that is difficult for one person to get through by themselves, at least if they know how to do the other two rooms. When you zone into that room, you actually zone into kind of a little area with respawning mobs, and a lever to kind of access the trapped hallways. You can pretty much bypass all those mobs, hit the lever, and go in through the gate. The door closes and the mobs can't get to you. But if you kind of hang out there long enough, you'll get a lot of mobs there that you might have to kill to keep your alert down. If you
What
do
you
want
want to... Oh, go ahead, bud.
If you do run through the traps, make sure you have a freedom of movement because the spell wards will paralyze you, and that would be bad.
In that first room, when you enter there and you do have all that trash, leave an archer or two because that will prevent them from respawning if somebody has to come back through.
Yep. A good point there. I think that's so. Those are the first three sets of rooms. Like I said, you'll get two of them. You get the choice between two of them. The third one won't be an option. It's completely random each time. You just kind of go with what you like. I mentioned that the jumping or Mario seems to be the favorite on Kyber. Have you noticed a preference on Sarlona?
We like to do the trap room, but
Okay.
we're mostly doing it on normal. I think we're going to start doing it on hard soon, so that might be a game changer. I do like the jumping room, but some people really despise, the Mario kind of areas and just want nothing to do with it, and I respect that.
Yeah, it's even if you know what you're doing, sometimes it can be kind of aggravating. Um, but there you go. All right, let's talk about the Bone Guardian. This is the mini boss. After you get through the second set of mirror puzzles, he's a big red named skeleton. Actually, graphically, he looks different than the other giant skeletons you'll have run into, which is kind of nice. It's a pretty simple fight. There's a lot of little skeletons there. Really, the only thing I think that's worth mentioning here is he can sacrifice the other skeletons to heal himself. So, other than that, it's a pretty simple fight. There's a chest, which is kind of nice. I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that.
It's a pretty basic fight. I actually didn't realize he can sacrifice the skeletons to heal himself. So, it's probably... Yeah, just also at this point, just as a matter of courtesy, make sure everybody's in this raid. Its lockout point is just before the end fight. So, if you're a courteous group, make sure everybody's in before you pop that chest at the Bone Guardian room.
Awesome. So then you go through some more mirror puzzles. Then you get to the second set of optional rooms. And these ones are a little bit more difficult than the first set. And again, we'll go from the same. I guess I should go back and say I don't think I said this very explicitly. In the first set of optional rooms, to the left is the Mario room. The center portal would be the portal maze. To the right would be the trap room, and the trap room would be to the north. So you can kind of figure out the rest of them from there. And the second set of rooms, the options are red light, green light, the gravity room, and this is actually, I think its official name, the combat training room. And that is, again, left, center, right, red light, green light, gravity, combat training being in the north. We'll start with red light, green light, and I hate red light, green light, personally.
I love it.
We had this conversation last time.
Yes, we did.
And this is, it's kind of a fun concept. I don't really like it because it's not. It's a fun concept, but sometimes it thinks you're moving when you're not, and it's probably say six. There's probably like 6 deaths in groups that I'm in, usually as a norm of people dying and then going, "Hey, I wasn't moving. What happened? I don't understand." Um, so that happens.
I
But the
think the
base
call jargs are probably bumping them.
sometimes yes, sometimes no. Um, so the basic mechanics of this room is there's orbs in they're all over the place. So you should always pretty much have one in view, and the color of the room changes as well. When the orb's green, you can move around as much as you like. When the orb turns yellow, that means it's about to turn red. Um, I pretty much subscribe to the rule of as soon as I see yellow, I stop. Don't move your feet. No jumping, no moving, no sidestepping, no tumbling. Um, take your feather fall off because falling is moving. Um, Once it turns red, if you're caught moving, you get hit by a disintegrate that does somewhere around 1,600 points of damage on normal. I have seen people survive it. Very rarely, but I have seen people survive it. Things that will make you move as well. Like I said, falling, pulling yourself up off of a ledge will do it. As Voodoo mentioned, the Klujargs, the red name skeletons, they can push you around, and that will kill you. That'll trigger it. So all things to consider. Um, Spell absorption does block it. So if you have a jeweled cloak or mana of the world shaper or a pale lavender, any of those things, they will block that damage. Um, so if you have one of those, put that on while you're running through it. Do you want to add anything to the kind of the mechanics and the tips of getting through this area?
It is a bit of a maze. It's not complicated to navigate your way through it, but there are some some floor lights that you have to toggle to open up barriers to advance through the maze 2 or 3 times.
It's 2 times. There's one at the beginning. There's 3 floor buttons. You have to step on all 3 at the same time
Yep.
to open up the barrier. And then at the end, you have to do the same thing to take the shield down that's around the phylactery at the end.
There's one in the middle too. It's just a single button that opens up
Oh,
a
right.
barrier.
Yeah, that's true. But that one is only one button, so uh, I tend to move a little slower than most folks, which is probably why I tend to get through it without dying because I stop on yellow. I don't wait for red to stop because it generally it seems like it detects movement a little bit before it turns red. So, but I mean, I don't like it. It's a personal thing. It's not necessarily a poorly designed room. It's just I don't like it. That's how it is.
I think it's a lot of fun, but they're definitely people love or hate this room. So, and I can totally understand why. If you can remember, put your featherfall on when you get to the top to the very end, because there is a jump or two right there, and I always forget to put my featherfall back on, and the call jargs slow you. So trying to jump over even a small gap if you're slowed by the call jargs is going to be tough without featherfall. And then
Very
you
true.
fall 2 stories down, and then you got to go all the way back up, and that's pretty irritating.
And there is a shortcut. When you get kind of the last area, there's a ladder that goes down. You can actually jump up and to your left. It looks like there's like a little barrier on the ledge there, but it's just decoration. You can actually walk right through it and climb up the ledge there. It's a little shortcut. And watch out for the helmed horrors in there. You can still swing. You can still cast spells on red light. You can still do damage. You can still take damage. Um, but the helmed horrors, if you those can be a pain, particularly if you're a caster. Those things pretty much chew me up all the time. Um, and I'd say as a group, go through this one slowly. Just trying to stay together, kill the stuff that's in the way. It's just gonna aggravate, particularly the helmed horrors and the clue jargs. Get rid of those. They got a lot of hit points, which is kind of annoying, but you're gonna be better off if you just kill them. You can also block. The clue jargs can't push you around if you're blocking. So you might consider blocking while it's on red, particularly if you don't have any spell absorption. I think that's pretty much all we need to cover on that one.
It's nice to have maybe a volunteer or designate someone to be the last person in there to make sure everybody gets through because if everybody just goes through when they get to the end and there's a straggler and they die in there, then you're going to have to run through it again. And it's not the easiest thing to go through by yourself. It can be done, but you want to make sure you have a very self-sufficient person to do that. So just in case that straggler dies, that last person in there can run back and get them.
Which is another reason why you kill as much of the stuff as you can. The archers aren't going to be as big a deal, but the Klugjargs and the Helmed Horrors for sure kill pretty much every one of those you see. Because if someone during the end fight, you can actually fall off, and you'll have to run back through this room. So keep that in mind. All right, that was the room to the left, red light, green light. Now we're going to talk about the room to the center, gravity, which on Kyber is the one that nobody wants to run. I understand why, and I'll mention why later. But the basic operation of this room, when you go in, you zone in, there's going to be a button straight ahead with the little roof right over the top of it. And that button has an arrow on it, which is indicating which direction the gravity is going. When you click the button, gravity reverses and you start floating up. You turn it off and then you start floating, you go back down. Of course, floating being the operative word, you may have to have featherfall on for it to float, I don't remember. But so that's the major mechanic of the room is you turn gravity on, turn gravity off. If you look around, there are spikes on the ceiling and there's spikes on the floor. And there's various areas where you need the gravity because you can't actually jump up that high and whatnot. So you turn the gravity on and off to kind of navigate through the room. There are 6 buttons hidden throughout the area. It can be very mazy in the sense that there's a lot of turns, a lot of ups and downs, places where you need to turn the gravity off and on. But with the exception of one button, or actually, except for the area of 2 buttons, you pretty much only have one direction to go. So it's not too terrible. It just takes a little getting used to navigating the different area. There's a lot of places where you can actually jump. You don't need someone to turn the gravity on. And the biggest tip I can give you is if you're hanging on a ledge, the gravity doesn't affect you. It doesn't throw you up or down. You just hang on the ledge. So generally the way that I like to do this is I'll try and send just one group of people to go to a specific button. So there's only one group moving that at a time to limit how much you got to turn the gravity on and off and on and off. And then when they get to their button, then I send the next group to the next button. I should also note that if you just stand on a button, there's traps on all the buttons, and they just kind of go off as long as you're standing on the button or even kind of near the button. So when you do get near your button, just grab a ledge, literally hang out for a few minutes. All the buttons are color-coded, and there's at the far end of the maze is another gravity switch with one of the buttons and the phylactery. To get the shield down around the phylactery, you have to step on all the buttons at the same time. So with 6 people, that means you need 7 people in total to kind of make everything work. One person to operate the lever or the gravity switch, and 6 people to step on. Actually, I should rephrase that. You need 6 people because one of the buttons is next to the far gravity switch. So you need 6 people to do that. When you enter, there's basically 4 different paths. There's to the upper side, there's a left and a right, and then down below where you zone in, there's a left and a right. I usually call them up left, up right, down left, and down right. I'm very creative with my names. The down right and the upper right each only have one button. It's the end of their path. So those are really easy ones to send people through, even if they don't really know where they're going. You just have to kind of navigate through. You can jump up in a lot of places that you don't actually need to turn gravity on or off. You can run through the spikes that are on the floor. They don't hurt too bad, at least not on hard. Some self-healing will be necessary, but it's totally doable to kind of run through the stuff. You get to your button. The upper left has 2 buttons, which is one of the only places where there's actually kind of a split in the path. So you need to send 2 people that way. Usually if I have someone who knows what they're doing, I'll send them with one person who doesn't in that direction, so they can leave them at the first button and then go to the second button. Down left is the way out, and is also where the red button is, which is the one that's the hardest to find. And hopefully I'll be able to get a screenshot or a video of this section in particular. But you go down to the left, and you kind of go up and over. And there's a place in that branch where you're on a little raised platform. There's the way that you came, a way straight ahead, and a way to the right. Straight ahead is a dead end. To the right is the way out. The red button is you have to go up with the gravity at that intersection, going to the right, and then it's a straight shot. And I don't know, do you have much familiarity with running gravity, Voodoo?
The most important thing to know in gravity is to avoid this puzzle at all costs. We never do it. The pub I was in last night had a pretty good guide through it, and he wanted to do it, so we did it. I still did not enjoy it, and won't do it again if I can.
Yeah, this is the main reason why people don't like this on Kyber is there was an instance where a particular pug basically spammed the gravity switch and made it so that the people couldn't get through the raid. They had to restart, which I very much understand is a reason not to run it. And I would hope that no one who listens to DDOcast would ever do such a thing because it really is a really annoying thing to do, and will get you blacklisted by pretty much everyone in the raid. So don't do that. Only turn the gravity on if you need it on. I found that for myself when navigating, if I'm asking for gravity, usually what I'll say is, please turn the gravity on for 4 seconds, and then people can use a buff in their buff bar to kind of count 4 seconds and then turn it off. That way you're not getting thrown all the way up into spikes. It makes the navigation a little easier in my opinion, but that's not necessarily the way everyone's going to run it. The key thing is getting someone to the different buttons, and the red button's the hard one to find. Other than that, there's more or less only other than the red button and I think it's the yellow button, yellow or green button. They're kind of like the only two places that you can actually turn off of the main path to get to. The good thing is if you do this one, you get an extra chest at the end. At the end of it, if someone falls off during the end fight, they'll probably need a friend to do it. You can use hirelings to push the button for you. That's an option. Although selecting things becomes a little tricky at that point because you can't select something other than that button. Yeah, and the traps are not evadable, or at least they're not savable. You can evade them, but you pretty much have to roll a 20 to save. Versus them. There's a couple that are actually a different style of trap that you can save against, but most of the time you're going to get hit by the traps. But they don't, especially on normal, even on hard, they don't do too much damage. You can run through them. You don't need to turn the gravity on and off constantly just to avoid all the spikes, and it's probably more trouble than it's worth anyways. Yeah, and then you can just usually what I'll do is my preferred path is I'll have everyone wait in the intersection room. I'll have one person come through, send them down right, have one person come through, send them up right, send two people, preferably someone who knows a little bit more about what they're doing and knows where how to get, knows that there's kind of a turnoff. I'll send those two people up and to the left. Once I have all of those buttons set, what I'll do is I'll have one person come in and man the gravity button, and then I'll take everybody else, and we'll go down left through that maze. I usually turn off and go to the red button while everyone else is kind of going through that direction, because that's kind of the last intersection. I found that most people don't have any problem getting through to the end, where the end part is, and then we all step on the buttons at the same time. It's generally kind of how I do it. But yeah, as Voodoo said, it's not a very popular room. So let's talk about combat training, which is, I'm pretty sure on Shalom is probably the most popular. It's definitely the most popular version on Kyber. Is this kind of the one that you guys tend to go for?
Yeah, it's a really easy one. It's fun, and not really much can go wrong here.
Do you wanna walk through this one?
Sure. You're gonna come into a room, and there's gonna be a tower, and there's a ladder that leads to the top, and there's also a phylactery surrounded by a shield. Now, your melee tunes, your range tunes can go up top. Keep the casters below because that shield around the phylactery is going to come down, and you're going to want to have your casters there to start beating on it. So at the top of this tower, there's going to be a bunch of mobs, and one of the mobs is going to have like a shadowy aura. Okay, and whoever strikes the killing blow on that mob is going to take on that aura. And a few seconds later, that person is going to explode. So what you want to do is make sure that you have your feather fall off, and you want to, well, as soon as you get that aura, you want to jump down to the north. Feather fall so you get down quickly, or take off feather fall, I mean, so you get down quickly. And then you run at the phylactery, and you'll explode, and it won't kill you if you explode on the phylactery, and that shield will come down. At that point, you want your shields to start dotting it up, uh, hit it with everything they can. Ruin works really awesome here. I saw a guy nearly one-shot it last night with Ruin. And then you're going to have to go through at least a couple iterations of that, maybe even 3 or 4. And then it's funny to watch people that didn't realize they got the killing blow or are not paying attention, and then they blow up. It doesn't kill people around them though, just they die. You can raise them, no big deal. You go back up, you get the aura, come down with the aura, blow up the shield, beat down the phylactery. You keep repeating that until the phylactery is destroyed, and then there's a portal you can go to advance the quest.
Some things that I think are really important to note here is one, everybody doesn't need to jump down. When the raid first came out, every raid I was in had everyone jump down to work on the fight. You don't need to do that. And really, 2 casters downstairs is plenty. You don't need to keep everyone else up so you can keep killing the trash and get those. You have to wait a little bit for the guy with the R to respawn sometimes. The other thing is dots, not bursts. Dot the bejesus out of that phylactery because the dots still affect the phylactery even after the shield goes up. So if you can get some dots on it, you can greatly shorten the amount of time that you need to do this section. And that seems to be something that is slowly getting into at least in Kyber, slowly getting into the general raid knowledge. But I still see people almost every run, someone goes down and brings the shield down and immediately bursts it. The shield comes back based on the health of the phylactery. So if you burst it, you're going to do a lot of damage in one shot, but the shield's going to come up and you're not going to be able to do any more damage to it. That's all you're going to get off it. But if you can get a couple of dots on it, you can really shorten the time down by half, if not more. I have done a couple runs where we've gotten it in 1 or 2 tries just because we got a lot of dots on it. And nobody burst it. So good things to know about that one.
Pretty straightforward.
Yeah, it's the easy one. It's the one that everyone seems to like, preferring that over red light, green light, or gravity for sure. And that is the portal to the right and to the north. Okay. Well, then you get to the shrine room, which is the only shrine room in the entire quest. If it's on normal, you can come back and use the shrine again. If it's on harder elite, you can only use the shrine once. You don't need to use it right now. You can come back and use it by jumping off the side during the final boss fight. I actually, even on normal, if I can, I try to conserve my spell points as I'm killing stuff, including trash. Like when you're doing the mirrors with a bunch of spawns, mostly of skeletons, but also some other stuff. I try and use SLAs on my casters and try not to spend too many spell points. One of the reasons why I actually don't like red light, green light is it always seems to be spell point intensive. But you can come back to that shrine. If you did gravity, it might be a little hard to do so. That's another reason why combat training is really nice. It's really easy for one person to run through. You literally run from one portal to the next, and it's maybe 15 feet apart, so not very far. Really easy to run back through. So yeah, once you do hit the shrine room, that's when the lockout point is. The lockout point in this raid is basically the portal at the beginning goes away, so you cannot DDoR at this point either. Which is important to note. You'll still be in the raid, but you won't be able to get back. But you can literally get knocked all the way back to the first mirror puzzle and run all the way back up. So I think before we get to the boss fight, which is the last part of the raid, we should probably talk about how to get raised and the death mechanic. There isn't a death timer per se that you'd be used to from raids like Lord of Blades and Fall of Truth. But what does happen is when you die, a wraith spawns, and the wraith's name will be Keeper of whatever your name is, your character name is. Um, you cannot be raised until that wraith is killed. And on Elite, they have a way too many hit points. Devs, please reduce the hit points on Wraith on Elite. It is too much. Now, having said that, if you run away from your Soulstone twice, for some reason, the Wraith currently goes away. That may change. That may not be intended. There hasn't really been a comment on the devs one way or the other. But you can do that to get raised. So if you do die, as fast as you're able to, run away from your Soulstone twice. Because those keepers are a pain. Not only do they prevent you from being raised, but they cast a lot of nasty stuff like Fear and let's see, Black Dragon Bolt and a whole bunch of damage stuff. So they're really kind of a pain in the butt. So if you die, run away from your Soulstone a couple times, and then you'll be able to be raised. Anything else we should mention before we get to the boss fight?
There is one sort of nuanced thing about at least the first puzzle area. It actually, technically, I guess applies to both puzzle areas. You know, when you have the choice of two out of the three different puzzles, is that whatever puzzle your party does, that doesn't block off the other. It doesn't make that the necessary path going forward. So, for example, one scenario I've seen come up a few times is in the first set of puzzles. You know, if your party decides to do like that trap room, and maybe they're on normal and they just ran through it and didn't disable any of the traps, and you're entering the raid late, and you decide I don't really want to try to run through that on my own, you could jump into the jumping puzzle and jump up and get through just the same.
There was an early bug where if you did both rooms, it could make the raid not completable, but they fixed that. So you can, yeah, you can do both rooms if you want. You don't have to do the same one. So yeah, good note. It's also worthy of noting in the optional puzzle rooms and the Bone Guardian room, there is no wraith spawning when you die. The wraith spawns are only applicable in the mirror puzzle during the mirror puzzles and the end fight on both the light and shadow side. Okay, let's talk about the boss fight. This is where it gets complicated. This is where you really earn your keep in terms of rating mechanics. So the way this works is you're going to be on the light side. Arglorosa is going to be there. That's the Shadow Dracolich. She does not have DR as far as I have noticed. There might be good DR, but I think every weapon I've ever used on her automatically has good, so I haven't noticed that. Every so often, you will get a spawn of trash. That trash will consist of a red-named caster, a red-named Klugjarg Battle Rager skeleton, and an assortment of archer and melee dwarven skeletons. The key things to note here are there are the Klugjargs, commonly referred to on Kyber as the Boneheads. And then the casters, you can only ever have 5 of them spawned at one time. So if you already have 5 of them spawned, you won't get more of them when they spawn. The Boneheads slow you down and knock you over and impede you greatly. Our tactic on Kyber is to have one person kite them around. I don't know how. Is that how you guys do it on Charlona?
There are two methods that I see people doing. One is to have a kiter or a tank just hold them. The other is to have your dragon tank actually tank the dragon and the Kulljargs at the same time, which is what I love to do on my caster druid, because the Kulljargs will just sit there and torque you up the entire time, allowing you to spam your spells on the dragon.
Definitely an option. Although I will point out that can make things a little more complicated at the end, because when you finally, and we'll cover this later, when you finally kill the dragon, you have to have it in a certain spot, and the Klugjargs impeding you while you have aggro, and Arglorosa pushing you around with her wing buffet can make that really hard. So just keep that in mind if you do go that direction. It'll be interesting to see, because they are lowering the hit points on those things. So it'll be interesting to see how people's tactics change in regards to that. Currently on normal, they have somewhere around 67,000 hit points, which is a lot. And it's kind of just a hassle. So most people like to kite them around, or you can have a tank grab them. One thing that I noticed is, I can't remember which side the arena that you're fighting in, 3 sides are walled. and then one side is open, and that side is you could actually fall off or get blown off or knocked off or jump off down to the previous mirror puzzles. You can go all the way back down to the beginning if you wanted to, or maybe didn't want to, and you get knocked that far. It's happened to me. Um, one of the beholders on the shadow side telekinesis me and threw me literally all the way back to the start. I floated all the way down.
That is outstanding.
And it was funny, but a little aggravating at the same time. But on that side, there's some crenellations along that edge. There's a little bit of room on the other side to you can run on. The Klugjargs don't get around that crenellation very well, so you can actually create a lot of separation between yourself by jumping back and forth over those crenellations, and they generally have to pretty much run all the way around to get back to you. So that's a way of getting around some of that. With 5 of them, if you're kiting them, if once they start impeding you, it can be really hard to get anywhere because one impedes you, one knocks you down, one impedes you, one knocks you down, and sooner or later you end up crowd surfing because you try and jump out of it, and then you're hosed. So that's how
These
that
guys
works.
these guys are a lot of fun to watch too. They look like little undead dwarven football players, and they sort of wind up and charge at you. It's comical. It's really funny. Um, One thing that I like to do, because you're right, they slow you down. It's really difficult to move. If I'm on my druid, my caster druid, I'll switch to Winterwolf form, and you can snow slide right through them.
Yeah, the snow slide, anything that's abundant step related and gives you a big burst of movement, it can be really great to get around them. However, just keep in mind that their charge is essentially the same thing and knocks you down on the way. So that can be a little bit of a trick.
And
Um,
they will knock you down even if you're in stand against the tide, which is really frustrating.
yeah, well, you probably should bug that one. Um, let's see. Um, the casters. The casters you have to kill. And the reason why is because they buff the dragon. Not only do they give her pretty decent damage reduction, but they buff her damage output as well. So you need to take care of those. Most parties will have 1 or 2 people that are kind of focused on killing trash. A blitzer is really handy here. There's the little skeletons are pretty easy to kill and can really charge up a blitz. If you do have a blitzer in your party that's supposed to be killing trash, don't kill stuff. Even the little tiny stuff, as much as you can, try not to kill stuff. Let them kill it and keep their charge going. Um, there's also going to be some traps at the beginning, some spell word traps that you want to have some guys disable. If you don't have a trapper, have some casters bring some. I can't remember the disjunction.
Greater Dispel Magic.
Great, yeah. You can bring scrolls of greater spell magic, wands. Morse kind of disjunction will do it. Remember, does enervation take them down?
I don't think so.
I don't think it does. I think you need to have the dispelling kind of stuff. But you can scroll them away. That is an option. A little bit more of a pain, but it is an option.
Casters, if you're not already doing this, carry a stack of 100 scrolls of Greater Dispel Magic for spell words. You'll find it really handy. You'll appreciate that you keep them.
I should probably start doing that. I'm lazy and have never done it. There's
Oh,
no
hey,
reason why I haven't. I just never did.
about the Calljargs, when you get trash that spawn in here, if you get a Calljarg on you, don't start DPSing it. Take it over to the person that's handling them and let them know you're coming in with it, and that way they can hit it with a spell or intimidate or something to pull it off of you.
Yeah, and if a note on that too, don't use a bunch of area effect spells until those guys are really dialed in and where they want to be. And maybe don't use them anyways, because sometimes they'll get loose, or that person might be cutting them around the whole arena. Hopefully not, but they might be. If you are cutting them, stay to the side where the crenellations are. Keep them out of the way, everyone's way. It's a pain if you're kind of bringing them in and out of combat, and people end up getting them. The thing is, auras, the Favored Soul, Aura Menace, and the aura that's in some of the divine trees will attract their attention constantly as well. Healing auras will grab them as well because they're undead. Just kind of keep them out of the way. And if you have one of those going, just stay away from them as well. I think you kind of have to keep their attention a little bit. If they can't reach you, you might need to shoot them and kind of say, "Hey, I'm still here. Come play with me some more." All right. Let's talk about Aglarasa. Why don't you give us some tips on how to tank Aglarasa?
Well, I've only tanked her on my druid, only on epic normal. I'm hoping to give it a try on epic hard really soon. I don't think it's going to be an issue. I'm looking to get some negative energy absorption items. I think that'll make the difference. Um, I just hold her aggro with my spells. I like to keep my fire elemental aura go on the body of the sun and hold the call jargs there, and they're going to continually hit me. And like Patrick said, once you get 3 or 4 of them around, you're going to be crowd surfing. So it can make things a little bit tricky. And unfortunately, it is a bug right now that even if you're in Stand Against the Tide, you're still going to get knocked down. I'm not sure if it's the call jargs or the dragon that's doing the knockdown, or maybe even both. And so Aglarasa is going to be shooting bolts of bursts of negative energy at you. So it's good to have a way to mitigate that. It's not too much on epic normal. It actually isn't hard to tank her on epic normal as long as you have a way to hold her aggro. And do you want to talk about placement or?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So where I like to take her is by the north levers. Um, there's sort of a I like to back into a corner. There's a part of the wall that sticks out a little bit, and it makes a nice little divot for me to back into, and that way the call jargs aren't pushing me around, and the party can just beat on her from the backside. If if you lose her aggro, um, typically you're just gonna want to have whoever pulled it. You don't pull her back to you so you can timber off them. Like I mentioned earlier, if you're on a druid, you can use Snowslide to burst through the call jargs. And one of the nice things about Snowslide versus like wings, if you run into a mob, they can stop you. But Snowslide is actually an attack that pushes right through mobs. So it doesn't matter how many are there in front of you, you can burst right through that as a Winter Wolf using Snowslide. Grab her back, pull her back into a corner. Where are people tanking her on your server?
Uh, Mostly the same corners. The big thing with tanking her is get her against a wall to start with. Um, she's a dragon, so her breath weapon is going to be a bit of a thing to be concerned of. She does tail slap and all this stuff, so people on the backside will get hit a little bit. But the breath weapon is really what you want to watch out for, and she will either shoot it like a fireball or do the sweeping breath attack. In any case, if you get hit with it, it doesn't just hit you right away, but it does a dot damage on you. It doesn't. I haven't ever seen it stack and do more damage, but it lasts for about a minute. And not only does it do that negative energy damage, but it also dispels Death Ward, which is why you need to have that Death Block item. No, but otherwise it's mostly just like taking another dragon. Just like Truthful One, get up kind of underneath her neck. She doesn't breathe on you as much unless she can blow you away. But if you're against the wall, she can't really do that. So that's a good way to do it. Plus, bring her against the wall, it kind of frees up the rest of the space for everyone else to work in and kill stuff. All right, so that pretty much covers the light side of what's going on. We should start talking about the shadow side, which is where things get really interesting. At certain points with Argos's health, she'll spawn shadows. And this is where stuff really starts to get key. You kind of need to have people on the same page. When you kill a shadow, it has a fairly high chance of creating what on Kyber we call a bubble. It's a little shadow portal. If you actually click on it, it'll say shadow remains. But it's very similar in appearance to a chaos orb, other than the fact that it doesn't move. They don't last very long either. Generally, what's going to happen is for a raid is you're going to have a tank. You're going to have someone to deal with the boneheads. You're going to have probably someone healing, keep a healer on that side, particularly for the tank. And you probably have one or two trash killers, depending on difficulty and how much trash there is. Everyone else should be trying to get to the shadow side. Now, kind of some things to mention about this is shadows only spawn at certain points in her health. You don't have to kill every single shadow. It can be really beneficial to. Normally, what we do is everyone who's going to go on the shadow side comes to the center of the area, and you try and bring some shadows to there. And you try and kill just one of them. and as soon as the remains pop in, everyone can go through there. And then you try and let the other shadows kind of hang out. You can, if you get them on the shadow tank, then that can work, or the Klugjarg Kiter, that works as well. Or even like if you're, a lot of times if I'm on a range toon or a caster toon and I'm on trash, I'll try and actually poach a few of the shadows and try and grab their attention so they start following me around as I'm killing trash. That kind of works because I tend to use draconic bursts a lot, so that sometimes I kill them that way. It's not a big deal if you kill them, but if you can avoid killing them, that's better because you don't have to bring Argyros's health down as many times to get shadows. And we'll explain why you're going to need more shadows in a minute. So that's something to keep in mind. The other thing to keep in mind is we didn't really talk about kind of where we're going strategy-wise, but when the fight starts, you need to get Algarosa down to a point where she summons shadows. Nothing else can happen until that happens. So you need to keep the casters and the trash down, but your primary goal for this phase of the fight is to get her down to about 50% or so, get her to spawn the first wave of shadows. Once she does that, you can keep working on her a little bit, but you shouldn't be trying to do a ton of damage to Argyrossa. You don't want to move her through the different phases, the different points where she casts shadows. And what happens is if she gets down far enough, if you haven't killed the real phylactery yet, she'll draw on the phylactery, she'll regenerate herself to about 50% health, and anyone who's still on the shadow side gets ported back to the light side, and that's very counterproductive, so you don't want to hit that point. So, to start, beat her down to about 50% until she summons the first shadows. Then stop working on her. Move a couple people through to the shadow side, and as people start coming back to the light side and you need to send more people, if you don't have any more shadows, then you start working on her again. Okay, having said that, shadow side. You need to kill a shadow to get a portal to pop up, and you try to get as many people through as you can. Again, you need to keep people on the light side. If everybody goes, she pulls everybody back. You have to have someone alive on the light side, or she pulls everybody back. On the shadow side, there's going to be a bunch of shadows spawning everywhere. There's also going to be a pair of beholders and a pair of helmed horrors. They're going to be on either, as you come in, there'll be one of each to the left, one of each to the right. When you kill the set on both of them on either side, the laser on that respective side fires so you can light up the crystals which open different portals. Through each portal is a phylactery. The goal here is to destroy the real phylactery. The real phylactery is randomly placed in one of those rooms. Every time a phylactery is destroyed, it starts a very short, what would you say, maybe 3 seconds, 5 seconds?
That's about right.
Yeah, so 3 or 5 seconds, what happens is it resets all of the rooms that can hold a phylactery. Anyone still in those rooms gets ported back to the light side. Key point there. The light side, not the shadow side, which is where you want to be. Which is why you don't want to kill all the shadows all the time. You're going to constantly have people going back and forth between the light side and the shadow side. And what happens is once you do that, the phylactery moves. It changes rooms. It's not the same every time. It literally resets the entire thing. There are, I believe, 6 or 8 rooms that it can be in or something like that?
6.
6? So there's a lot of rooms there. Now, let's look before we start going into the rooms. Do you want to add anything to the whole process of moving between light and shadow side?
One of the things I've noticed is that newer players don't see the portals. It doesn't look like anything else in the game. It's not a big, huge, obvious portal. It's like Patrick said. It's like a little black bubble. It's about maybe not even half the height of your character. So, and this is why you want to pull the shadows to the center, kill them there just to spawn the portal, because it's only up for about 5 seconds, maybe 10 seconds tops, and you don't want to run around looking for it. If you pull them to the center, you know the portal's in the center, and when people say portal up, look for that little black bubble. You're not looking for a big, bright, obvious kind of traditional looking portal. Also, emphasize too that, at this point, once you're going through to the shadow side, you're not DPSing the dragon anymore. At this point, your tank is just babysitting the dragon.
Stay alive. If you have guards on it, that's not going to be a problem. You're not going to move through the different phases. If your guards are taking the dragon down all the way down before your shadow side team is getting some iterations through the flashy rooms, there's something wrong with your shadow team. Um, but yeah, even if you know what you're looking for, even like I know exactly what I'm looking for a portal, and I was just running one this morning, and someone was like, "Shadow up on the north side." I'm like, "Wait, where?" By the time I got anywhere close, because I was on the other side of the room, like there was no chance of me going through the portal. Like even if I know what I'm doing, so try and pull the shadows to the center as much as possible before you kill them, so everyone knows where the portal is going to be and can expect it to be there. If you want to move that point somewhere else, you can. The center is just kind of an easy place to bring stuff to. The other thing I want to mention too is when you go to the shadow side, direct your shadow team to either go left or to the right. You don't have to aggro both sets of beholders and helm torches at the same time, particularly in hard difficulties, because they can start killing you pretty good there. Um, so usually my groups tend to go to the left for whatever reason. Kill the stuff on that side, and you get portal. You get the laser working, and you get portals up. Okay, let's talk about the phylactery rooms. Each room is more or less the same. There's actually a bit of a different layout, but they're kind of weird rooms in that you can't really see any of the walls. It's just kind of a hazy, shadowy area. Well, it's not like visually obscuring, but it's kind of a vague area. And there's a phylactery in the middle. There's also going to be some respawning shadows to hassle you. Now, as far as I'm aware, there's basically two strategies at this point. One is to try and get have people in as many different rooms as possible and prep all the phylacteries. And then once one dies, you kill as many as you can in that short amount of time. The reason why you do this is one of those 6 rooms has the real phylactery. So the more rooms you can kill in one iteration, the higher your chances are of actually killing the correct phylactery. Problems with this. It's really hard, particularly in a game with as many dots as we have. There always seems to be some sort of Shirati caster in the group. And I've been guilty of this. I was working. We were trying to prep the phylacteries, and I was using Frost Lance with my sorcerer, the spell-like ability. First shot, okay, 10% damage. Second shot, 12% damage. Okay, great. 10% damage, 12% damage. Half the phylactery in damage. What? Suddenly everyone's out of the room because I was trying to prep it, and I did an amazing amount of damage for whatever reason that I wasn't expecting to do, and it was the only phylactery we got destroyed, and now the entire shadow team was on the light side again. So the prepping version, if you can do that with your group, that can be a good way to do it because you have a higher chance of getting the right phylactery. It can be really hard to coordinate it, and generally what I would recommend if you're going to do that, send one person in, get their phylactery prepped and stable, not just prepped but stable, so it's not going to die. There's not a dot on it that they don't know about. They don't have a laser turret up, anything like that. It's stable, but they're ready to kill in about 3 seconds notice. Send the next person into a different portal. You can move the laser which changes the different portals, different rooms that you're going into. And the next person in, get them to prep it. If they accidentally kill it, or anyone actually kills it at any point in time, they need to immediately let everyone know, kill your phylactery, mine's dead. Kill your phylactery, mine's dead. So that way you get as many of them killed as you can. Maybe you get it, maybe you don't. And you keep doing that until you get it right. The second method is basically a one-at-a-time method. If you do it this way, you only have a 1 in 6 chance every time. Doesn't get better. It's every iteration is 1 in 6 chance of getting the phylactery. Advantage of this is you can send someone in, they kill it as fast as they can. You don't have to time it with anyone else. And this is kind of the popular method on Kyber right now. How do you guys like to do it?
We tend to do the one at a time method, sometimes 2 at a time. And important to note here too that the people that are getting sucked back to the light side are just the people that went into the portals, into these vague rooms with the phylacteries. The people that are on the shadow side that haven't gone into the phylactery rooms yet, they won't get sucked back to the light side when the phylacteries go down.
Yeah, good thing to note. So some tips of this thing. In either case, whichever method you do, someone's going to need to lead the shadow team. Don't go into a portal unless that person or someone acting in the capacity of that person tells you to go through. And that person needs to know what they're doing, and that person needs to keep track of what's going on. Um, when you do kill a phylactery and you get ported, once you're on the light side, once you're through the teleporting phase and you're actually on the light side, let everyone know that you're out. I personally, I've had some groups who please tell me over voice. Personally, I'd rather see it in chat because if I miss it, I can read it there and still see it. That's me. But do both if you can. That's probably the best way to do it. Do both. But let them know when you're out of that side so they can start sending more people in. If you are using the one at a time method, um, there's no someone may or may not be able to solo those. Um, I've had people that when I've been leading shadow side, like, hey, I don't really think I can solo it. Like, well, go in, give it a shot. If they die, you can send someone in to res them and help them finish it. Right? There's no, not you're not really losing anything in terms of bodies if they fail. So that's an option as well. I typically, if you're doing the one at a time method, send the people in that can do it the fastest first, or key members of the other side. Um, if you're kind of short on healing and one of your healers is on that side, maybe you try and send them through. Or if someone can help kill trash really effectively, you might send them through. Probably that's going to be the same person, someone who does really fast. But think about who you're going to send through. I have no problems if, and I actually did this not that long ago. I was leading a shadow side, and one of the guys in my guild was on a Shiradi caster. Every time he was there, he was going through because he could do it fast. And at this point, it's iterations. It's how fast can you kill that phylactery. You don't always want to have someone who's going to take 5 minutes to kill a phylactery going in that portal alone every time, right? Because you're just killing time at this point. So you want to get as many iterations of killing the phylactery as you can. So send the fast people through, or anyone who might, if you have someone who can be really helpful on the other side. That's if they're stuck on the shadow side, your light side might be having problems. Try and get them through. Generally, they're going to be the same person. The guy who can kill stuff faster is going to be the most helpful on the side. So, do you have any suggestions on this?
No, I think you got it. Yeah, I don't really have anything additional to add right now.
Yeah, and just keep track of where people are. Once you get down to like 2 or 3 people, tell the light side to start working on the dragon to get more shadows. Hopefully there's some shadows still hanging around that they can come back through anyways, but probably not. Keeping shadows alive is surprisingly difficult, even in groups that are trying. Let's see. Anything else to add on there? Sometimes I'll switch the portal just because I'm superstitious and one portal seems to be poorly working. But yeah, if you do the method where you're trying to prep the portals, it seems a little counterintuitive. But send the people that can really kill the phylactery through at the end. There's 2 reasons for this. One, those are people that are going to have a harder time prepping a crystal or prepping the phylactery because they end up doing a lot of burst damage. So sometimes it can be really hard for them to kind of hit that right point where they're prepped, but it's not going to die. So send them through last. The other reason for that is if you end up with most of your people on, like if while they're prepping, someone kills it and now you only have 3 people left on the shadow side, just switch to the one at a time method. Send the guy who can kill stuff really fast, and they'll just go back to the other side really fast. It's just kind of how I prefer to do that myself. But it's at that point, if you're doing that prep method, it's kind of a little bit of a crapshoot anyway. So hopefully you will kill the phylactery without going through too many iterations. If you're lucky, you get it on the first time, which usually means the next time it's going to take you about 20 iterations. At least that's my experience. Once you get the real phylactery, Aglarasa will make some sort of, she'll have a little speech that she gives. At that point, she goes back up to 50% health. So it doesn't matter how low you had her, which is one of the reasons why I was saying you don't need to keep working on her. She's going to be at 50% health at this point anyways, regardless of where she was before. On the shadow side, in the center of the arena, there's a shield, a big bubble in the center. You can't go there. Once the real phylactery is dead, in that area will be a bunch of little shards of phylacteries. You need to pick those up. You can only carry one at a time. You need to take it back to the light side. Where you spawn when you take a shadow portal, there's a portal there that will always take you back to the light side at any point in time that you wish. You can always do that. Then there's little bowls around the center of the arena, little braziers. You need to put those shards in those braziers. You need to get them all lit up. So you're still going to need to get some shadows to spawn, to go to the shadow side to grab those, however many it takes. At this point in time, unless you're the shadow tank or the Klugdrag tank, go through. If you see a portal, go through. I don't even care if you're healing the tank, unless you're really struggling to keep them up. Even the healer for the tank, go through, grab a phylactery, get back to the other side, light a brazier, and get back on your healing duties. Because you need to get those lit as fast as possible before you can kill her off. You actually have quite a bit of time because they don't actually need to be lit till she's going down. But there's no reason to dilly dally on it. If you see a portal, even if you weren't on the shadow team before, go through, grab a phylactery. You're coming right back. Take you 10 seconds at most. Anything to add?
You're on it.
Awesome. So how would I turn it over to you and tell us how to end this thing?
Once you've got all your shards of the phylactery in place, then what you want to do is you want to position the shadow dragon in the center on that mound that is surrounded by all those braziers. And she's gonna go down at about 5% health. It's actually her health is not fully her health bar is not fully gone. It's actually at about 5% health is when she's gonna go down. At this point, you need to have people on the levers in the north and south corners. And when she goes down, and she has to go down on that mound, you want to have people pull those levers, which shoot some lights, and that will actually kill her. If you don't time this right, and she goes down off the mound, or the levers weren't pulled right, she'll actually heal back up to about 50% health. Now, a good strategy here is to have multiple people on those levers, because there's still trash floating around at this point, and if trash happens to aggro on them, it can interrupt them while they're trying to pull. So if you have a couple people there, if you're a druid or you're an arty, you get your dog out too, they can pull as well. And so it's just more chances to make sure that you get an uninterrupted pulling of the lever. It can also be good to maybe have a caster have a firewall up on the lever when she's getting really close. That way, a caster who's not a lever puller, that way, if any trash does spawn, it will be immediately pulled away from the lever pullers. It's good to have range tune on those levers, because that way they can continue to DPS the dragon while they're manning the levers. But you want to make sure that you're not mini shotting her or something while you're prepping her, because you don't want to pull her away from the center. She needs to go down on the center. Can't emphasize that enough. Once she goes down, she will collapse, and there'll also be DM text on the screen, and you've got like maybe 5 seconds for both levers to be pulled. Otherwise, you're gonna have to beat her down again.
You have just a little bit more time than it takes to actually pull the lever. So timing is really critical there. And I've seen a lot of people like sneaking near the levers when it gets really close. Rogues sneaking near the lever can be a really good tactic to avoid getting aggro. Invisibility, you kind of do the same thing. Yeah, firewalls, cloud kills. Be careful. You don't want to get too graphics heavy in that area, because you want to be able to find the lever. And another tip is, if you're a range tune and you're shooting Arglorasa, you can select the lever, and then you can still kind of use your, almost as if you were in mouse click mode, you can still shoot her. Your arrows aren't going to go towards the lever. You can still shoot her, but still have that lever targeted.
And this part can be finicky too. Like, it can look like, she may be half on the mound, and you might think that's good enough. You really want to get her as close to the center as possible, just to make sure that there are no mistakes. And if she does get pulled off the center, stop DPSing immediately. Hopefully your leader will say all stop, all DPS stop on the dragon, because you don't want her to go down by accident when she's off of that mound. Because like I said, she's going to heal back up to 50%, and then you're going to have to deal with that all over again.
One thing that really helps when you're trying to position her, if you target her, the little targeting circle, that's what matters. That's the position that matters, because she's bigger than the mound, to be honest. So with the position thing, it'd be a little weird until you recognize it. That little circle, when the thing that whenever you target something, target a monster, it has a little circle around it to indicate what you're targeting. That circle needs to be on the mound. That's what you're looking for. And also say when you get down to like 15, 10%, no more dots. Take the dots off. Because if she ends up walking off the mound and you got a dot on her and that kills her and she's off the mound, you're kind of SOL. You got to do it again. That might mean turning your Dumble Rainbow off as well. So just be aware of that.
Good point.
Once you do get her down, clean up the trash and you get the loot. And that's pretty much the whole thing in a very big nutshell. Anything we
Don't
uh, anything
don't
we should
count
add here?
any don't count on any named loot dropping. It's like one
Yeah,
in a million chance. Devs, please up the drop rate of the named loot there. I saw something drop last night though. I think it might have been the first time in about 30 runs that I saw something drop.
I've seen a couple of the Battle Raider harnesses recently.
That's
Um,
what dropped last night for us.
yeah, the loot drop definitely seems to be a little low though. Um, so let's see. I'm just gonna try and run through this in my head real quick, make sure we didn't miss anything. I think we pretty much got it all covered. Um, it's definitely an exercise in coordination because it's all about uh, getting as many people doing as many different things as you possibly can because you need to get as many people on shadow side. So it's how few people can you do each task that you need to do is kind of the trick that's involved there. But it's a good raid. It's a lot of fun, um, especially once you get the timing and stuff down. And just be careful killing her. Make sure that she's in position, and make sure if you're on the one of the levers, communicate. If you get stuff harassing you, let people know immediately. Um, there's two reasons you stop DPSing the dragon immediately, and without regard for anything else. If there's someone harassing your lever pullers, get that taken care of. And if she's not on the center, you need to get both of those taken care of so you can kill her and have it be successful. But it's not too difficult. We haven't really been having problems in my groups either. So there we go. All right, with that, if we don't have anything to add, we'll cruise into the lightning post. And just picking a survey question this week. To have Voodu here, this is a great question for us to answer. This comes from Radzax. What do you need to tank the Stormreaver in Fall of Truth? I'm going to let Voodu start with this.
I love tanking the Stormreaver. I have 4 of my tunes set up to do so. Patrick and I were talking a little bit about this before the show. I would highly recommend having about 1,000 hit points or more because the Reaver can hit you with a lot of electrical damage. Not absolutely necessary, but even if you have high evasion and a lot of absorption, he puts like a stacking debuff on you that makes you even more vulnerable to electrical damage and reduces your save. So in addition to having a decent amount of hit points, I would also recommend having every piece of electrical absorption gear that you can possibly find. Obviously, you're going to want to have the basic resist going, but I also recommend twisting in Energy Sheath, and that's from the Draconic Incarnation Epic Destiny. It's just a tier 1 ability, so easy to twist in. That's kind of like Fire Shield. It does 50% absorption, and you can select it to absorb electrical damage. Another great item to have is like a green steel electrical absorption stick, and you can craft all 3 tiers. This is a single sharded item, so it doesn't take a whole bunch of resources to craft that. But you can put on a weapon, I think it's 10, 15, and 20% absorption. So there's a lot of absorption there. There's lots of randomly generated energy absorption items now, shields and armor. I've found them up to 24% on shields and armor. Those are a little bit tougher to find above 20. The 20s and below are pretty easy to find, but 22 and 24 can be a little more rare. You also want to make sure when you're using multiple energy absorption items, that you're not using items that have the same percentage, because they will not work in conjunction with each other, and they don't stack directly too. So for example, if you had a 10% absorption item and a 20% absorption item, I'm not sure which one will take effect first, but just for example, 10% of the damage will be taken off, and then from the remaining damage, 20% more will be taken off. So one is calculated, and then the other, after the first is resolved, it's not 10% and 20% equals 30% absorption. Okay, so make sure that when you're wearing multiple absorption items that they're different numbers. So you can have your energy sheet that's 50%. You can have a green steel that's 10, 15, and 20. You can have like a 22 or 24% absorption shield. You can also have your prismatic cloak, which can be, I think it's 26, 28, and 30%, depending on if you have the epic, normal, hard, or elite version. And then you can also have a crafted 33% absorption item, a Caneth crafted 33% absorption item, and then your Ring of the Jinn also has 33% on it. So you'd want to use one or the other. The Ring of the Jinn, I believe, also has, if you have the Epic Elite version, Sovereign Electrical Resistance, which is 50 points. So as many of those items as you can get. I actually, when I'm taking the Reaver, actually use all of that. I've got the green steel in my hand, I've got the absorption shield, I've got energy sheath, I've got prismatic cloak, I've got 33% of absorption crafted item. Um, and even then, with all of that, he can still hit me pretty hard. Uh, I don't want to say I never die, because sometimes things go wrong. It's happened once or twice. But with all of that, you're going to be able to stay alive. It's also really helpful to have a spell absorption item to absorb that debuff. Um, I haven't really figured this out, but the Pale Lavender Stone works really well. Sometimes it can last the whole raid, and sometimes 2 minutes into tanking the Reaver, he has chewed up all of the charges on that Pale Lavender. So I'm not really sure what the mechanic there is that is making him eat up all my spell absorption charges. Patrick, maybe you know that one? Because
Yeah,
I'd
I do.
really like to know the
I'll
answer to that question.
keep going. I'll chime in there when you're done.
So really, it's electrical absorption is the key. I mean, that is so huge to staying alive, taking the Reaver, and you if you die and that Reaver starts running around and gives that boom curse to everybody, I mean, that can wipe the raid right there. So it's really important that if you're going to take the Reaver, that you can stay alive and handle him. And if you're on a caster, just dot him up throughout the raid. Uh, Depending on how fast the rest of the party is DPSing the Truthful One, you can actually, like on a favored soul, for example, you can, if you have pretty strong light dots, you can just dot them down and prep them. I like to tank them on my Druid, so I'm using Creeping Cold and all my SLAs, Storm of Vengeance, and so on, and I can DPS them down and get them prepped. Usually by the time that your party gets the Truthful One down, if it's good to be mindful of the Truthful One's health. If the party is DPSing the Truthful One a lot faster than you're prepping the Reaver, what you want to do is call for light ranged DPS only. I emphasize light, and I say this to my groups over and over and over. Light means do not pull aggro. Some people, they think it's some kind of accomplishment to pull the aggro off the tank. It's not. It's irresponsible playing. And in the case of the Fall of Truth, you can wipe your party and sabotage the raid if you pull the Reaver off and over to the party. So light range DPS, that means no mini shot, no bursts,
No
and no
melee.
no melees. Absolutely not, because you're gonna go run up there, you're gonna get the boom, and if you take it back to the party, you're gonna give it to them and again potentially wipe. So just people that can do range damage, light range damage, can help DPS the Reaver down.
Okay, so I'll chime in with a few things here on that topic. DPS is not necessarily required. You need to keep the threat up. You need to make sure you can hold his aggro. Um, so definitely, I would leave it more to the party leader about uh, managing when the DPS should kind of help out. Generally, if it's up to me, what I usually do is once the spectral dragons spawn, what I'll do is I'll assign a couple range guys, and I'll tell them that I want them to swing back and forth. And what that means is I want them to keep the two even. So whichever one is higher, that's the one that they're working on. But certainly, you're not bursting, you're not many shotting the Reaver, you're not fury shotting the Reaver, heaven forbid, unless like we're killing everything, and then you can start doing that. But um, on the topic of electric absorption, yeah, you want to get some electric absorption. I don't generally go quite as crazy with that. Um, Definitely the crafting, Kenneth crafting, you can craft an item, 33% electrical absorption item. It's I think level 70, 71 in elemental school. I was able to do that pretty easily, but I had probably a year and a half's worth of ingredients that just kind of sit in my ingredients bag. But it's not too hard to get up to. It's pretty reasonable to get there. Um, or the Ring of the Jinn is also an option. Um, I don't have anyone that's got a green silk shard or anything like that, or green silk crafting or anything like that. Um, Energy Teeth is really helpful. Improved evasion will help mitigate the damage. Evasion can be helpful, but you need to keep in mind that if he's going to be stacking the debuff on you, it's not going to work because your reflex save is not going to be high enough because his debuff reduces every stack reduces your reflex save by like 10 or something like that. So your improved evasion works even if you fail your save, it reduces it by 50%. So that's going to be real helpful. Um, there's also some other options for reducing energy damage. Shirati has an ability that will reduce energy damage by 15% until you die. And you can cast that on other people, so other people in the party can cast it on you. The Unyielding Sentinel has an ability, block energy. If you're blocking, even if you don't have a shield, if you're blocking, you can reduce energy that way. I believe the Purple Dragon Knight shield has a similar ability that will do that. There's also a feat, if you have a shield and you're blocking, you have a percent chance to ignore energy damage. Although that one's not going to be as helpful because it's basically a percent chance of whether or not you die if you don't have other stuff going on. So that's something to keep in mind. In regards to spell absorption will absorb the debuff. It's important to keep in mind that all the dragons in the raid and the trash can hit you with that debuff or variations thereof, which will take away your spell charges. It's also important to note that the Cloud Giant or the Storm Giant, everything other than the Frost Giant, in terms of giants, casts spells, which will drain charges, including the Stormreaver. And the Stormreaver casts Meteor Swarm, which is probably what's draining your charges pretty fast, because that'll hit you with 4 charges. So, when he hits you with the boom, you'll get a little countdown timer. What I like to do is I'll put whatever my spell absorption item is, and an alternate. It doesn't necessarily matter which kind of alternate it is. Stick that on your main hotbar. When you see that countdown timer, you switch to your spell absorption item, so it's on for the least amount of time as possible. And 2, you start blocking if you have anything that applies for blocking and reducing your damage there. So that'll help you get through his main stuff. He still does hit pretty good. Some other things, if you need to start getting creative about taking him, maybe your main guy died and you're kind of filling in. Hit yourself with Protection of Energy. His boom attack is pretty much the only thing he does that deals electrical damage. So that's another 120 hit points right there. If the boom hits, or if you get that counter timer, throw a cocoon on yourself if you can. That's another 120 hit points that you can do that with. Those are 2 notes also for if you're healing someone who's the Reaver tanked. If you're having trouble keeping them up, particularly after that boom hits them pretty hard, or that maybe they're out of spell absorption charges or whatever, you can see graphically when they are going to get hit, like a few seconds before they hit with the boom during that countdown timer. Those are 2 things you can throw on them right away, and that'll help them stay alive, and you can get that timing down so you can get that quick healing on the back end. Let's see. The other thing that you can do, while we're talking about taking the Reaver, let's talk about positioning for a second. if you have some serious DPS, if you're one of those Fury Shotters that can get the Reaver prepped in 30 seconds flat, don't. Here's why. When the Reaver gets down to 50%, he starts batting you around. Uh, if he hits you and basically he'll throw you into a wall, you'll hit the wall, you'll rebound and go halfway across the room. Taking off Featherfall can help mitigate that, but if you get far enough away, you'll lose aggro and he'll go after somebody else. But he doesn't start doing that until he's about 50%. So wait until the Spectral Dragons are out at least before you hit that benchmark if you can. So that's kind of one note. To help mitigate that, usually what I do is I set up so that I'm halfway between two pillars on the edge of the stairs with him facing me with the wall behind me. What happens is he'll bat you, you hit the back wall, and you fly right back into his face. And I found that to work really well. The other thing you can do, if you have to be creative, and I don't really recommend doing this, but I'll mention it because I do it. And Voodu was talking about, he and I had this conversation beforehand. He said you need 1,000 hit points to successfully tank the Reaver. My Artificer has 661, and I've done it on several occasions. Now, I do this by being very clever. And what that means is I keep turning the Reaver. Now, the key part here is you don't want to turn him facing the party, because if he booms, he can throw that thing all the way across the room. So you want to stay between him and the wall. So he's always going to throw the boom into the wall and not the party. But if you kind of strafe between two pillars, you can kind of do that. If push comes to shove and it's an emergency situation and you're just trying to keep him off everyone else, you can run around the pillars, so he has to run around the pillar to shoot you. But just whenever you turn him, try and turn him towards the wall, not towards the party. So that's kind of some stuff that I use to help do that stuff. You can also get the sigil. There's a sigil in the Magister that someone else can cast on you, or you can cast on you, that gives you stacking elemental resistance. That's also an option. And a final note, you should probably get sonic resistance. His sword does sonic damage.
Biggest thing to worry about is the electrical by far. His other damage types aren't so huge. In addition to batting you around and throwing you across the room, he also can knock you down. So if you're in Sentinel, standing against the tide is really nice here.
Yeah, he can do that. I hardly ever had problems with that. It's happened occasionally. But, knock on wood, it's never happened. I've never been knocked down where I needed to swap my spell absorption item in. But
can be a little tricky when you're self-healing if he's knocking you down at an inopportune time. Also, I'm really bad about this too, so probably worth mentioning. Your energy sheath, that's only what, a six minute buff or so. So you're going to be casting it on yourself at least twice, more than likely. So make sure that you're watching that in your buff bar and you recast that on yourself, before it goes away, because that 50% absorption is huge.
Yeah, the biggest thing is managing. If you're managing the debuff and if you're swapping your spell absorption item in, you'll probably be fine. That's kind of the key thing. A normal hit will do something like 800 damage, I think, 600 to 800 damage on normal, or sorry, on hard. If you get up to a 5-stack, you're looking at somewhere in the neighborhood of probably like 1,800 points of damage or something like that. I don't remember the numbers off my top of my head anymore, but it's significant. So if you're not using spell absorption, or you run out of spell absorption, that's when it's going to get hairy, and that's when the more electrical mitigation you have will be helpful. Pump up your constitution, pump up your hit points for all you're worth. If you got a healer on you at that point, have him cast protection of energy on you after each boom. He doesn't really do any electrical damage any other than that. Make sure people are keeping trash off you, because they can hit you with the debuff and a boom attack as well. So keep the dragons off you as well. That'll drain your charges pretty quick. Just that kind of stuff. So with that, I'll say thanks again to Voodu for joining me, particularly on short notice. And thanks to the other guests and DDOcast contributors. Thanks for listening to the show. Thanks to Turbine and the Wizards. And thanks to Cyberbears for hosting the podcast. Hit us up at DDOcast.com for show notes, our calendar, previous show, swag, and other fun stuff. If you want to be part of the show or just say hi, you can email us at DDOcast@gmail.com. Our closing tip for the week, Silver Dragon says, have fun and don't forget to gather for buffs. Indeed. That's a fun one right there. And so, until next time, may all your attack rolls be crits, all your chests level appropriate, have fun, and don't forget to bring that electrical resistance.